Hi folks, welcome back to Britannia Wine Merchant's Tasting Room. This is the fun part really of my job, and the experience of wine itself is obviously about tasting it. And so we have a scenario where you've got your food, you've got your meal planned. Now you need a wine to go with that. So we're going to talk a little bit about food pairing and talk about some wines and some options that you can have wine-wise. So before we get really into that, there's a few things you want to consider. Obviously, what are you having? And when you're thinking about that, you're thinking about perhaps a protein base of some kind. And so with wine, you're going to consider, first of all, above all, your own personal preference. Now, if the scenario here, we're going to be talking about red meat. And if red wine is not your bag, then it's all right to say that. It's all right to walk into a wine shop with people that know what they're talking about, saying, you know what, I'm not a big red wine fan. I like Chardonnay. That's fine. We can find you a white wine, even a rosé, in fact, that might go with that. It's just going to be a bit more robust. But we would recommend, if you're asking us, if it's red meat, if it's a beautiful day, sun is shining, you're going to have a barbecue, throw a few steaks on, red meat seems to be the obvious choice. So within that, for a wine, you're thinking about the grape itself, you're thinking about the body, and you're also thinking about the acidity, because if you're having a nice big juicy steak, you want some acidity to cut through that. And more importantly, you want to marry those two ideas together, your steak and your wine. You don't want either to overwhelm the other. And sometimes if you get that pairing a little off kilter, it can really affect the wine, the dish itself, as well as the wine. So you're having steak, sun is shining, fire up the barbecue, you're gonna barbecue a steak tonight. These are the wines that I would recommend. We have a lot of options to choose from. There is a wonderful little Malbec out of Argentina from Uma, and that's going to be a big blackberry, robust textured red and really good value. They're in that sort of that $20 to $25 range. You can obviously go to Australia and get yourself a wonderful little Cab Shiraz blend from the Thompson Estates, the Four Chambers. And they're a beautiful Cab Shiraz with all of that spiciness, all of that texture, and all of that weight that you want. Classically, I love going to the Rhone Valley in France, and a wonderful little Côte du Rhône village from Laval. And that is Shiraz, Syrah, Grenache, and Mourvèdre, a classic blend. You can also go to South Africa. A lot of people know South Africa as Pinotage wines. They can be very, very big and very smoky, very powerful wines. This is the Big Easy, which is a blend of Shiraz, Cab, and a few other Rhone type blends. So that's a fantastic wine for barbecuing. The wine that we've decided to go with today is out of California, out of Lake County, so just sort of north of what you maybe consider Central Coast in California, north of Napa and Sonoma and so on, from the Dancing Crow Vineyards. These guys are using pretty much 100% Cab with a little splash of Merlot in it, but it's a big, robust, juicy red that I think goes perfectly for the occasion, for barbecuing. So we're going to open up this bad boy and we're going to give it a little taste, and I'll kind of walk you through what tasting a wine's all about. Remember that there are no rules. The biggest rule is what you like. Express that to the shop that you're going to, and they should be able to match a wine perfectly for what you like with what you're having. That's the only rule. So we're going to open this bad boy up here. Dancing Crow. Right. So, get to see my wine opening expertise. Get her in there. Lots of times you'll see wines that are in what's called a Stelvin enclosure or a twist cap, like the Thompson here, and that's fine. Bordeaux's been using twist caps for decades, and they finish it off with corks in some cases. But just because it's got a screw cap doesn't mean it's a cheap wine or a bad wine at all. And in fact, little known fact, a good 10 to 15% of wines in the world are considered corked because of the cork. We can talk about corking later. Speaking of corks, that was a bit messy. We'll cut that out, make it look pretty. So it's opened, there it is. Now, sometimes people like to decant their wines, so you can get yourself a decanter, pour it in, let it breathe, as they say, for a little while, maybe about an hour or so. That'll just open up some of the secondary flavors, let the fruit mature a little bit, and just let it breathe, as we say. But in this case, we're just going to get right into it. Now that's about enough for a tasting. If we're going to drink this thing, obviously, we're going to have a nice full glass. But that's enough for a tasting. So what do we notice first? Well, we notice the color. We notice if there's any aging, what we call bricking perhaps, where the wine itself has gone perhaps a little brown on the edges, which again is only an indication of age, not of quality. And in some cases, it's a good indication of quality. So in this case, it's a 2016. It's young enough, light and bright. Although it's a cab, it's going to be pretty big. So then we take a little sniff of that bigger. Now what we're also checking for here is that corking quality that I was talking about. So if it smells of the cork itself, it is what we call corked. It's hard to pick up sometimes. Some people just think it smells like cardboard, or I've heard wet dog, or kind of medicinal in approach. But it just doesn't smell good. We know something's wrong with it. This is perfect and smelling wonderfully. So I'm looking for the fruit components in there. So what I'm getting out of this cab right now, so I'm getting some leatheriness, a little bit of that tobacco quality. I'm getting some really nice vegetal elements, which I would suggest are coming from perhaps even some Cab Franc splashed in here. And it's smelling real good. And then we taste. So you'll notice I did that little slurp thing. Now, it's not inhaling the wine. That's a bad idea. Wine in the lungs, you'll choke and embarrass yourself at your dinner party. But if you just suck a little bit of air into there, you're aerating the wine. And that air running across the surface, which is what this swirling is all about, creating air inside here, opening up the surface of wine, is just going to help the wine express a little bit more. And it'll just magnify the taste of the wine. So I try not to do that at dinner parties. You look like a bit of a nerd and a geek, and people are like, what's with the slurping? But just for the first taste, it's a technical thing, just to see what's going on. But tasting it straight ahead, there's a lot going on in this glass. So then I go for the second tasting, which is a little bit more about the quality of it. So great structure, great acidity. I can see this going perfectly with any red meat, with a roast, with any a beef product whatsoever. It'll also go really nicely with game, and in fact, even with roast chicken. You can even get into some other white meats perhaps, but this is a perfect match for steak on the barbecue. So I hope you can pick one of these up. Any of these will do. Remember, it's what you like, it's where you shop and how they can match the food that you're having with the wine that you're looking for, and to enhance that experience for you. So I hope you enjoy that. Cheers. Salut.